Finally. Yeah. Okay.
Right.
Well, thank you for joining us, Brooklyn and Lexi, today on this special episode of TBD Philosophy. Uh, it's not every day we get to have such cool and awesome special guests on a call with us, so we are so pumped and so excited. Okay, I can breathe again now. Can you guys see my screen? Just want to confirm that it's being shared.
Yep.
Yes, looks good.
Okay. So, our topic today is alteration or mutilation. Isn't that such a good title? Oh, I love it. Choosing for the incapable. So, the question to pose to you is, how do you provide care for a child? Answer typically comes in the form of a medical counsel. When there's any sort of controversial or big medical decision to make on behalf of a kid, or just someone incapable of making the decision themselves, then normally it's an entire team and board that is put together in order to come up with a solution. So I was like, wow, I'm surrounded by tons of super smart, intelligent people like Brooklyn, Lexi, and Tanner, who would make an amazing council, not a epic council to rule all other councils, a epic medical council. Yeah.
Beautiful.
So,
Sorry, I just want to insert. Are you recording? Did you get to start that?
mhm,
Okay, just
yeah,
in case you've recorded. Great. Sorry about that.
no, you're good. Thank you. So, um, what is it that we're going to be counseling about? I guess it's just why, really, right? Because if this podcast is to basically make little nuggets of wisdom or knowledge for our Chileans in the future, I kind of had three so whats that I thought of that I wanted to kind of get across to them. One is that life is not Disney. Hard things happen. You don't always save the princess. It doesn't always feel like a happy ending. Two, um, everybody's different, right? These stories that we're going to hear are just hard medical situations that children and parents are placed in. And what makes them truly heroic is how they handle their own specific problems instead of comparing themselves to others. And the last one is that there's no right solution to these, I think. No single right solution. There's lots of different possibilities that we can always choose from in life. And at the end of this presentation, I'm going to swing back to these three takeaways that I thought of and see what you guys thought and if there's any more you'd like to add. So, are we ready to jump into our first story, our first case study?
Oh boy, let's do it.
Let's go.
Thank you, Tanner. Okay. Okay. So this is Ashley. We don't know her last name. That's why she's referred to as Ashley X. Her basic story. Will you read that for us, Brooklyn?
Ashley is a girl who has the mental capacity of an infant as a result of a non-mosaic GRIN1 gene mutation. Her parents petitioned to have her undergo 4 medical procedures in order to make her life more comfortable. The procedures are hysterectomy, the removal of her breast buds, 2.5 years of high-dose estrogen treatments using skin patches, and an appendectomy.
So
Wow.
just to give a little more background for the purpose of these treatments, the hysterectomy is so that she won't have to endure the discomfort and pains of menstruation, since she's never going to be able to reach a point in her life to have kids. The removal of her breast buds is so that she'll be able to continue to fit in her harness, like her seatbelt. That's like full body for her, to help her be comfortable with that. The estrogen treatments is actually to stunt her growth so that she won't. I think at the time of this treatment she was around 70 pounds, I think, and the purpose of the treatment is to keep her at that so that she won't. So that she'll be easier to care for her parents. And the appendectomy, I think is how you say it. I'm not sure, but the purpose of that is honestly just in case that ultimately she can't communicate if her appendix was to be hurting a lot, and so to just take it out because they can, and she wouldn't be able to communicate the pain otherwise. So I got a brave soul to start us off with a hard yes or no of what they think what they think Ashley's parents should do, if they should follow through with the treatments or not.
I mean, that's a tough one. When you say infant, is that like 1-year-old or like 2-year-old, 3-year-old,
Or like a newborn.
like a newborn?
Is it? Yeah.
With all of these stories, more information would always be more desirable, and I recognize that in real life these counsels spend a ton of time learning about the individual situation. I'm going to guess and say that I think it is pretty infant like she responds to smiles, if I remember right, but no communication.
I see. That's a tough one. I mean, I think if the intent and the end goal is to make her life easier and better, then it would probably be okay in this situation. I don't want to say, I don't want it to be like a thing where, the standards for this case are the same for the next case, and whatever it is, it's got to be done by a case basis. But yeah, I think if that would improve her quality of life, and if it helps the parents as well, then I think it would be a reasonable solution.
Very nice. So it sounds like we're getting a good yes out of Tanner. You got any thoughts, Lexi?
I think I could say yes on most of them. I feel like the stunning her growth one kind of like gets me like thinking. I'm not sure like if I like that, but I could also see how that makes sense to make it easier on her and especially the people taking care of her. That makes a lot of sense. But what was the last one? It was the removal of what?
Taking out her appendix. Typically, the way how doctors know when it needs to come out, or one of the big signs, is the pain that it starts to cause. And since she doesn't need it taken out, because she can't communicate pain, they are taking it out preventively.
Yeah, as far as that one, I don't think I would do that one just because I feel like babies now can't tell us that and we aren't taking them out. Although I see that she will be like that for the rest of her life, but I feel like to some extent you think she'd still cry or something and be uncomfortable. And maybe I just feel like it's like the dentist, right? If the cavity is really small, he's like, let's keep an eye on it, let's keep an eye on it. But if there's nothing seemingly wrong, I don't see why you would want to take anything out of the body that's already having a hard time working as it is. You know what I mean? But yeah, that's my thoughts.
Okay, so Lexi's going 50-50. Kind of a fun hot take. What's your 2 cents, Brooklyn? How are you wanting to tip the scales?
I would want to do some more in-depth research about the impacts of each of those things on her, especially having them be done at the same time. It's a lot for her body, and if she wasn't able to recover, then maybe you would wish you had only done one of them instead of all of them, right? Or if it's for ease, like
I'm actually gonna push back on you a little bit here. We're gonna take it as a given that more information would be essential for all these scenarios that we're going to come across. With the limited information that you do have, and you have to give a yes or no, what's your inclination that you're leaning towards?
well, I don't know. I mean, that's not quite how life works, right?
Nope.
Yeah, I don't know. I think procedures that would help her her body function better would be good to do, but procedures that are just for the ease of the caretakers, I don't see that quite as necessary.
Well, but then like she if she's got the mind of an infant, is she really going to care about that?
Yeah, because an infant can feel pain.
Yeah, that's true.
I think in that case, I just think like we took care of my great grandfather when he passed away. He like died in our house, and I just remember like he was, he's big. He was still a big guy, and I just think that if he had the mind of an infant, and when an infant like cries or moves their arms, I feel like there's more potential for them to harm themselves if they're much bigger than if she were smaller. That's one thing I think.
That's such a good point.
That's a good point.
It's good to put in perspective.
Before I think you're against the estrogen treatments, Lexi. Does that mean you're leaning more towards them right now?
I don't like it. I still don't like it. I think I'm with you, Brooklyn, that it just seems like we're taking that away from her, which is sad. But I do think that when I think about it on the caretakers and her side, it seems like it could do more harm than good to let her grow so big and not be in control of her body. Like that seems like it could cause her more harm. And the people who are taking
Yeah.
care of her, she could harm them, I think.
Yeah.
Fair,
That is the point.
fair point. And Lexi, do you perchance have headphones in or on your speakerphone? Your voice is sounding very robotic. So if you could either swap to speaker or swap to your headphones, it might be better. Fingers crossed.
Okay, I'll do that.
Okay, thanks.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, I feel like I'm getting vibes that people agree with the first two fairly easy then. And I think it sounds like we're coming around to the third one. Anyone have any lingering pushback against removing the appendix?
I
I
think
do.
I think that one makes the most sense, right? Like the appendix can kill you like in less than a week if it bursts.
Mm.
And so like if she can't communicate that, then I think that'll probably be a good thing to do.
What does a doctor do to determine that an appendix needs to be removed? Does anyone know?
I can pull
I
it
don't know. It's a test. I just
Like,
know that
I just
when
want to know, would it
when
be
it's leading
possible?
it's leading up to rupture, it just increasingly causes more and more pain, and then they do whatever test they need to do, and they take it out if it's on its path to rupturing.
Yeah, so according to Cleveland Clinic, they'll perform a gentle physical exam to check for physical signs of appendicitis, such as guarding, stiffening, and pain in response to pressure. So that's one of the ways. Let's see.
One thing that I think kind of interesting, I guess, is I think it's interesting that everyone was pretty on board with the hysterectomy and removing of her breast buds, even though I feel like, well, I guess the hysterectomy is to spare her pain, but the breast buds, I feel like, is to spare inconvenience to her parents. I feel like it's super similar to the estrogen treatments of stopping her from growing. Um, what's my 2 cents on that? I guess my 2 cents is I feel like we aren't necessarily being consistent in our logic. I feel like if we easily accept the first two, we would need to easily accept the second two as well. Is my thought.
That's what I'm saying. I'm saying do all of them, but
Well, I think out of well, okay, actually, does anyone have any 2 cents before they want to say something? I feel like I just did a big statement for doing all four and want to make sure people have another opportunity to rebuttal.
Could you restate what you explained? Why you think that they would all be the same?
I feel like the purpose of the hysterectomy is to save Ashley pain, like the pain and discomfort of um, cramping, and I feel like the removal of her breast buds is out of convenience for her parents, so that they can still strap her into her like chest harness and stuff when they need to carry her around. And so I guess I feel like the avoidance of pain for Ashley or the increase of convenience for her parents, I think those are the same justifications for the latter 2 points. The estrogen patches are to create more convenience for her parents, and removing the appendix is to avoid, I guess in that case it is potential pain instead of guaranteed pain. But I don't know, this is actually not even the most spicy one. I think the next one's even more controversial. But
Oh no.
does does anyone have more thoughts on this before carrying on?
I vote that we move to the next one.
Okay. I feel like I did a little bit of bulldozing on the last bit of Ashley then, so I'll try to talk less this next one. But even if someone wants to come back and say, "Oh, I have a new aha moment with Ashley," just let me know and we'll run back.
I feel like the goal of this is to try to determine if this will improve their quality of life in the long run, right? Otherwise, why would we be doing this in the first place? So I think if we hold it to the standard of will it improve the quality of life for that person later on, is it worth it?
Yeah,
I like-
good to remember.
Well, thank you. And with that, this slide is not activating. This is a poll that we could do for the presentation. Sadly, it looks like it does not work when I'm presenting from my iPad. I definitely need to together next week to do this on a computer. But should Ashley receive her parents' desired treatments? I think. Oh, you know what? Maybe I can just open it up right here. Oh, no, that didn't work. Okay. I'm gonna on this one. You guys, yeah, I'll say yes or no, and I'll close with my yes or no on these. So, I don't know. It feels more biased if I do it first. So, yeah, yes or no. Final answer.
Okay, I think yes, because I think that it would improve quality of life for Ashley.
I'll vote yes as well.
Yeah, I'd say yes too. And I think that improving the ease or not of her caretakers would in turn improve her life, because caretakers aren't going to be able to or want to help her if it's like crazy difficult, especially when it doesn't have to be. So I think that improving their life also will improve her life. Yeah.
That's such a good point.
That is definitely a point I did not think of before, and I'm also happy to say that your mic sounds way better, Lexi. So, thank you for the input.
Good.
My
Mhm.
my vote is also yes. And when it came to the decision of the medical board, they agreed. This was a huge deal, very famous case. They moved forward with all four of the procedures, and just kind of a conclusion to Ashley's story. an interesting side note. There's a little controversy slash debate around this, but her primary doctor actually completed suicide soon after Ashley went through the treatment. Some people argue that it's because of guilt. It definitely sounds like most of the consensus is that that's not the case. Just an interesting side note, I feel like. And updates to Ashley life can be found on her parents' blog. And the last update was 2018, but it seems like she's continuing life happily in their household. So, wow, right? All
Very
right.
cool.
It's good.
This next scenario has to do with in vitro fertilization
Oh boy.
and deaf embryos. Will you read
So
this?
wait,
Oh, go ahead.
or yeah, I can read that. I just had a question about deaf embryos. How do they know if it's deaf?
I don't know. I just know that they can. Just by like, I
Wow,
don't know if
that's
it's some
cool.
test or just, yeah, by maybe they like take a cell or two off the embryo and then test the DNA. But yeah, they can tell whether or not the embryo will be deaf, which is
That's
Yeah,
incredible.
that's interesting.
a huge part of this controversy. So if you would, Tanner, go ahead.
Okay. A bill on IVF. In the spring of 2008, the Human Fertilization and Embryology pushed a bill through the English Parliament that added more regulations to the uses of IVF. Section 1449 of the bill states that the selection of a hearing child through IVF is permitted, but embryos found to have deafness genes will be automatically discarded. Interesting.
Will you read this one for us, Brooklyn?
At the time of the bill's passing, Tomato Likey and Paula Garfield were the parents of one daughter, and they desired to have another child. With Paula in her 40s, they thought it would be necessary to use IVF. Tomato and Paula thought that the Human Fertilization and Embryology Bill sent out a clear indirect message that the government thinks deaf people are better off not being born.
So further background, both Tomato and Paula are deaf and already have a deaf child at the time of this bill passing. And the two of them, Tomato and Paula, are both very successful professionals as well. I remember, I think Paula is an actor and Tomato is in charge of like a school or something like that. So like they're, I guess this goes to, so I'll explain their argument. This goes on to their argument. So they feel like, I'll start on the left with the equality of choice. They feel like it's a cornerstone of modern society that you need to have equal rights. So they feel like if you have a right to throw away a deaf embryo, you should have the right to throw away a hearing one also. They want to have in vitro fertilization and specifically have an embryo that they know will be deaf. Isn't that, whoa, how spicy is that?
Mm-hmm.
And this is kind of their whole take on it is this right here: deafness. It's not a handicap for them. I'll just read this. I find this shocking, detestable, and utterly inhuman, says Litchi. I'm a governor at a school for deaf children. When I visit, I see a class of 30 deaf children, all happily singing to each other, running around and creating chaos. Some will be artists, some will be accountants, some may go to Oxbridge, following the path that several of my deaf friends have already beaten. If they have been conceived via IVF and detected as deaf at that stage, then all would have been aborted before birth. That's kind of the stakes that they feel like they're fighting against. And a last input for their argument, and something very new to me, is that the deaf community is very proud of their deafness. Will you read these for us, Lexi? These two quotes from them?
Yeah, sure. See, to them, deaf, like black, is not purely a description of a physical attribute, but an expression of a cultural identity. Being deaf is not about being disabled or
medically incompetent. It's about being part of a linguistic minority. We're proud of not of the medical aspect of deafness, but of the language we use and the community we live in. We want it to be something that our daughter can share as she grows up.
So,
Hmm.
should Garfield and Litchi be allowed to choose an embryo with deafness? Ah, I don't know why. Instantly, to me, this one seems more intense than the Ashley story. What's some people's initial thoughts?
Well, I think this honestly goes back to a little bit to abortion, and like you have to determine what really is the start of life for a person, right? Like, is an embryo life? Is it like 3 months in, or what is it? I personally believe it's like at the soonest point, which is conception, and so if an embryo has been conceived already, that is a life, in my opinion. And so I think that any throwing away of life is a tragedy. And so I'm against that. I'm for them doing the deafness IVF or whatever. I think that's a good thing to do.
So, if I understand right, you're pointing out that you're opposed to in vitro fertilization in general, but
No, I'm not
assuming
opposed to it. I'm not opposed to it.
Selection of embryos.
I think that all embryos should be treated as if it's a valid life.
So
Okay.
you don't think there should be any embryo
Well,
selection even for any disabilities?
well, actually, before we jump into that, to give a little more background, something that I also didn't really know until recently. Um, in the process of in vitro fertilization, hundreds of embryos are disposed of or frozen indefinitely. It's just part of just the way how the process works. Just statistically, it's most of the embryos won't make it, and so they go and they get a ton of eggs from the mom, and then whatever sperm is chosen to use, and so they'll fertilize hundreds, if not maybe a couple thousand embryos. Um, and so as far as I guess that's why I made the jump to say that you're opposed to in vitro fertilization in general. If in vitro fertilization is being used, there will be the death of hundreds of embryos.
Okay, I
Kind
didn't
of
know. I'm not super
yeah,
familiar with in vitro, so that's interesting to know.
yeah, no, you're good. So I guess assuming, if I understood you right though, um, in the taking it as a given that in vitro fertilization will happen, you support this couple in being able to choose an embryo with the gene makeup for deafness. Is that right? Is that what you said?
Yeah, I don't see why it would be an issue. I don't see deafness as a disability either. I think it's just another way that people live.
Okay. Brooklyn and Lexi, any hot takes to add?
I mean, I don't really know any deaf people, but like from what I would assume is I would think that whether I guess maybe I don't quite know the definition of like handicap or disability, because I think that any kind of minority that would make it hard to like communicate, I think that would be a disability that would be hard. Do I think that's a bad thing? No. I think that can still be celebrated and beautiful, but I don't think that we shouldn't call it what it is. And maybe I don't understand what a disability or a handicap is, but to me that is like that would be a challenge. That would be hard, right? But I still think that they should definitely deserve to live, and that if that's what they want to have, like why not? I don't see the problem in that. Yeah.
That's very solid thoughts. What about you, Brooklyn? Any thoughts to add?
So I think something unique about this case is that Tomato and Likey are able to provide a really good life for a deaf child. They they're deaf, they know how to teach a child to be deaf. They can provide education and a community so that the child will thrive, right? So in this case, I think that it would be good for them to have a deaf child. However, if saying yes to this case means that anyone could choose to have a deaf child regardless of whether they're deaf or whether they can provide a good life for a deaf child, I don't think that is always a good choice.
I think that's an interesting thought.
Yeah.
I really struggle with this one and want to like scream no. Like, not a chance. What? You want to intentionally make your child deaf? Like, what? um I guess I kind of with that opinion, I often think of it as the assumption of like policy change, whether we allow people to do this or not. But I think that's a really good and interesting point to separate it, to acknowledge that they can provide um, a way better life than another family who all have hearing if they wanted a deaf child for the experience, or something like
Yeah.
that. Um, I don't know. I still feel like I'm no though. Just I want to say I feel like it's taking away opportunity from the child and their capabilities, but I feel like that's Garfield and Litchi's argument is they're saying it's taking away their child's opportunity from growing up in the deaf community and having that connection. I still just don't like it though. I don't know.
Yeah.
I'm
Well,
like
when
how I guess I think how many people who have hearing would want to lose their hearing so that they could be part of the deaf community. And I have a hard time imagining someone who desires that, which just makes me
that,
want to.
can I make a comment?
Okay, yeah, go ahead.
That's the point that I think the argument sits on, is you're saying as though there were a regular, like a hearing embryo that's going to become deaf, but that's not the case. It's, look, there's a hearing embryo, there's a deaf embryo, which one gets to be implanted, right? So it's not like you're taking anything away from that embryo, you're only giving it a chance to live.
But at the same time, then you're also restricting the other one, no matter what, right?
Which is inevitably the
Yeah.
problem with in vitro.
Which I didn't know that about in vitro. I thought it was like one egg and then you fertilize it, but I didn't know there were so many. So
Yeah, I thought so too, Tanner. I think the knowledge that hundreds die or are indefinitely frozen really changes, really adds some depth to the church, because the church's official statements is that they are for in vitro as long as the like married couple uses their own sperm and their own eggs, then they're for it. So I don't know, I think that makes it a little spicy. But that is a different topic for another day. I guess going back to what you were saying, Brooklyn, I feel like, I guess my example trying to say, imagine someone with hearing, would they want to lose it to join the community? I guess I'm trying to say that I feel like uh, I'm trying to grasp it. Like, I think there's definitely value in the deaf community, and I can see why their parents would want their children to be able to experience it. I just have a hard time thinking of someone who, if they were given one or the other, they would pick. I mean, take someone who is deaf and is given the opportunity to have hearing aids. I mean, I'm sure that person's out there, but I bet most people wear their hearing aids, and prefer hearing. I just can't get over the feeling of you're limiting your child and inhibiting their opportunities.
Yeah. Well, I
Man,
think it is also important to consider what they argued, that by saying that a deaf embryo couldn't be implanted, that's essentially saying that the government doesn't value the lives of deaf people. So I think that is that does communicate that, and that's pretty scary and dangerous, right? Like how far off is it from eugenics if we're only selecting for perfect embryos? And where does that leave disabled people in our society?
I agree with you, Brooklyn. I 100% agree with you, but I'm going to play the devil's advocate just a little bit. For the government on their side, they're trying to create people who are like the most productive to society to generate the most taxes, right?
Yes.
Like that's pretty much their end goal. I feel, well, some governments are like that.
We can pretend that they just really value human life and want people to thrive, right?
Yeah, exactly. But really, they just want our money. But yeah, I don't know. I agree with you. I think that it does set a dangerous precedent for that kind of thing.
Well,
I'll say, Joseph, that initially, since this is not the first time that I've heard this case, and initially I definitely agreed with you, and I immediately thought, what? That's crazy. You know, they should not have a right to do that. But I think given the circumstances and the knowledge that they have, honestly, I don't know if these parents would be well equipped to provide good opportunities for a hearing child. And in that case, it might be worse, to give them a hearing child. And that hearing
good-
child might not thrive as well as the
Had a
deaf
path.
child. Yeah, exactly.
That's a good
That's a
point.
good. That's a really good point, Brooklyn.
Out of interest of time, I will give Lexi the spotlight to send us off with some thoughts, and then I'll reveal what actually happened. So, floor is yours, Lexi.
I think it's all been said really well. Yeah, it's all good.
Okay. Well, then how about you start us off, Lexi, in your opinion? Are you going to vote yes or no on this one?
That they can choose an
Oh.
embryo, a deaf embryo.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should they be able to? What was that?
Yeah, I think they should be able to choose that. Hmm.
All right. Tanner or Brooklyn?
I'm for it.
I
Yeah.
agree. They should.
Oh my gosh. I did not see that one happening. I thought I was going to be in the majority of this one. I am still in the no camp. We'll have to grind more about it later, I guess. I mean, it's hard. I definitely laugh, smile, make jokes, because you got and you got to. You're just talking about something, trying to discuss something, and I guess I was just gonna say I do recognize that they are real people, like Garfield and Litchi. Yeah, they are real people, and that's really sad and really rough. This is a really painful position to be in. Um, but as for their outcome, they were not allowed to have
Really?
a child with an embryo screened for deafness. However, yeah, so they were not able to use IVF to have another child. However, they naturally conceived and gave birth to a second deaf daughter. So they did
Wow.
get their wish naturally. I know the odds were in their favor, huh? And on top of that, they were actually able to I couldn't quite tell if they just petitioned or if they sued. They pushed back against um lawmakers or policymakers because they wanted to name their child in sign language, which I don't know how to pronounce that, but that word at the end there, that's like the spelling of her name in sign. Um and they they pursued the laws, and the law allows you to name your child in your language, and so they did it. They're the first ones to name their child on their birth certificate as that, which I'm not sure how to pronounce, but more power to him. Good for them, huh?
Mhm.
Wow.
All right. This next one It has to do now that this is a very controversial topic in thought, Brooklyn, with the word you threw out earlier, eugenics. Particularly before World War II, the United States was sterilizing handicapped people. As we all know, in the Germans then took inspiration from them in Germany, and during World War II, they were sterilizing their own handicapped people as well. This is a very controversial topic, the sterilization of adults with disabilities. And there's one case in particular that we're going to focus on. This comes from the Royal Australian and New Zealand College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists. Is that
Gynecologists.
perfect? Thank you, Tanner. Also known as RANSCOG. So their name is mouthful, but they don't reveal many personal details about this individual, but this is a true case that they gave out in a study, a true story of a woman in her mid-20s. He has an IQ of 70. The more I looked into this, the more I learned that this is considered like you're borderline functioning, you're borderline able to be independent, like take care of yourself, hold a job, kind of idea. Like it's a very case by case basis whether that's something possible for you. She has had 7 children. And in her mid-20s, by the time she's in her mid-20s, she has had 7 children, and they were all passed on to her parents to be taken care of. So her parents applied to a medical board to have their daughter sterilized. What are the thoughts? What are people's opinions?
I feel like we have so little information.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, is she married to the person and having kids with like another guy? No, it's just random people.
Multiple
Oh,
partners.
Is she living with her parents or just her babies? Just
She doesn't take care of the babies. They are all passed on to her parents, and she's not living with her parents.
oh, geez, this one's spicy, Joe.
Yes, it is. Huh?
Oh, because I mean, like, if you take the perspective of the parents, they're having these kids that they didn't have, and they're having to raise them and feed for them and provide for them, and like that's a huge burden on them for an additional 7 kids. So I can see where they're coming from with the application, but like the girl doesn't know any better, right? Is that what the IQ means? Like that she just doesn't have the mental capability?
Yeah.
Borderline
Let's
seems like it.
assume so. I mean, you're all right, right? I love how the first thing you said was we need more information. You're right. So we're gonna have to take this real case and apply some boundaries and lines and assumptions on them. They may be right, they may be wrong, but for this case, let's assume that yes, he does not realize the consequences that her actions are causing.
Mm.
I wonder why they didn't consider giving her an IUD.
Yeah,
yeah.
I feel like that's a more
That-
humane way to do it. Or like,
That's a very good point. I'm not sure for how long IUD technology has come along. Maybe it was before that's a very feasible option. Let's see. If I leave, I might. Did I not put the link in? I didn't put a link in the show notes. I have the link saved. I just don't want to. I have the link at the very end. I have a slide of sources at the very end, but I don't want to reveal the rest of my slides. So we're going to have to hold off on that. Sorry.
all good, all good. But what do you remember if it was earlier or like in the last
I
couple
feel like
decades?
it's older. I feel like
Older?
older. All of these cases are older. Like like around 20 years or more or so. You know. Yeah.
I mean, IUDs have been around since 1967,
Okay.
potentially as early as 1909.
Wow.
They've had them.
I mean, it is still a good question how well developed they were and what the symptoms were, but
Yeah, I think the symptoms have been pretty bad, and I don't think they've ever lasted for longer than just a couple years. Like they've only recently been coming out with ones that last longer than like 6 years. So
Well, even still, you could
Well,
just
I think
put it every 6 years, and
Well-
that still is the better.
so like see
maybe
point
another.
sometimes IUDs create a lot of cramping and pain and they mess with your hormones, make you irritable. So they do have a lot of health side effects that would impact your well-being.
and I have two friends who got them within the past 2 years, and they both had to go to the ER to get them removed because of their symptoms. So this is
Wow.
like brand new technology that's like, and it's still just dangerous. I do think it's better than getting rid of those organs. I think it's better to do the IUD, but it's still not like, it's not safe. You know what I mean? All this women health stuff is still not figured out very well. One thing I wonder about though,
Well, what about
Oh.
that?
So let's
Go ahead.
let's make the assumption then that the IUD is not an option, either because of side effects or cost or technology is not available. Yeah, whatever the case, it's now to a point to whether he either needs to be sterilized or will continue or it's safe to assume she will continue to have children.
Oh, that's so black and white. Okay.
Yep.
I think-
I mean,
Thus
You
is
know-
the intent.
speaking from my parents and my in-laws' experience, both my mom and my mother-in-law have both gotten, is it a hysterectomy where they take out part of your uterus? Yeah, they've both done that after they were done with having kids, because they just didn't want to worry about it. And I mean, 7 kids is quite a lot of kids. I feel like you can be fulfilled, so I'm gonna just take a jump and say yes. Yeah.
All right. Brooklyn and or Lexi, you want to proclaim your opinion?
I don't know. I feel like I keep going back and forth, especially, but I don't know. One thing I think about is when the parents are to pass away, like what then happens to the kids and what happens to the kids that she keeps on having. You know, like, but then you think about like, I'm sure there's other women on the streets who are having kids right and left and just handing them to orphanage and the government isn't doing anything about them. So it's like, kind of seems unfair to do anything to her. But at the same time, it's like, I don't know, it can't be healthy for her kids if she keeps having them and just sends them, or maybe she doesn't even know that they need to be taken to an orphanage and she leaves them somewhere. You know what I mean? Like that's not safe then for all her kids she's having. So maybe, but then I'm also like, that just doesn't seem fair. 'Cause
Even with orphanages, like,
Well, they actually don't have orphanages anymore. It's just the foster care system.
and the quality of life in there surely isn't as good as even just grandparents, right?
No, yeah.
Yeah.
So is that a yes from you, Lexi?
No, I don't know.
I
don't
think
know.
based under these very specific circumstances that we're creating, I say yes.
You say
Alright,
yes, she should be sterilized.
Yeah.
Yeah, and we'll give you a couple seconds to make your final answer, Lexi, and we'll turn over to Brooklyn to see what her final answer is.
Oh, no. I don't know. I think it just goes back to like how much choice do we have over ourselves and then for society's safety, you know? Because it seems like for society's sake, it's safer for her to be sterilized, but that just seems really extreme. But it'd probably be safest for her and her potential kids if she were. So yeah, I'd probably say do it, but I don't like it.
Okay, thank you.
I see
You, Brooklyn.
where you're coming from, like, see with the idea that, like, if we're taking the idea that the government is trying to control the safety of people, that could get dangerous and that could get out of hand. So that's interesting to consider because you wouldn't want it to go too far, of them taking our rights away, right? That said, I think she should be sterilized. I know that a lot of rights are given to parents to have and raise their children. And in this case, she's not capable of being an effective parent. And so I don't think it's fair to the children, like when she can't even provide them with any quality of life, like she is completely incapable of caring for them. I think in this case, like, she does have her parents, but it's not their choice how many more children they have, and that's not fair to them, right? And if there were a woman who were deemed incapable of caring for her children, the government would take her children away and put them in the foster care system. If she was on drugs, if she wasn't able to hold a job, if she didn't have an income, if they had a really poor quality of life, if they were in an abusive situation, they would be removed from the household. And so
See, I would just say real fast that that's kind of my point, though, is that the government takes the children. But I don't see the government sterilizing these women who they're taking the kids from their homes. You know what I mean? Like,
yes,
if she's capable of apparently, I guess, taking care of herself, maybe, I don't know. She's not with her parents, but the kids, like, she's having them. And so I really think the parents need to be more responsible. Like, they need to be like, no, take them to the foster care, take them to wherever and see what happens. You know what I mean? Because then it's off the parent's shoulders, then it's really on her, and then the government can, like, really get into it if they want. But otherwise, I think the parents haven't tried everything that they should before asking such a price for their daughter. Like, yeah. Anyways, sorry, you can resume.
So what else are you saying that the parents should do?
They should drop them off at foster
I guess if
or send them off
I
to
guess if I guess if I may to just recap and summarize a little bit, like, see, I've gotten the impression that I feel like basically what you're saying is in this specific case, you are for her being sterilized, but you are either confused and or scared of the can of worms this opens of at what point do you at what point do you stop sterilizing women who are not fit to take care of their children? Because you're saying there's plenty of women who have children that shouldn't be taking care of the kids and they put them in the foster program, but we don't sterilize them. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, I think I would agree with most of that, but I think even with this case, I'd still say the parents can do more. Like, I don't know. I don't know. If I had more of a hands-on, I'd be like, they need to have like a professional, like, sit her down and talk with her and be like, well, you are living on your own, so you understand somewhat of life, right? Like, you need to feed yourself. Like, do you get that these children will be sent away when your parents die? Like, do you see what kind of, like, effect you're having on them? You know what I mean? And if, like, she's really not having any grasp, then something. But I just feel like the parents, if they're feeling like it's too much responsibility, then they should stop. They should give them to foster care and then still keep in contact and be like, okay, now she sees what's going. You know what I mean? I just think that the grandparents need to be holding. They can be doing more too by doing less, I think.
I think that's a very fair point. Is your vote still yes then, or are you leaning towards no now?
I'd probably say no, unless if they were to do those things I just said, and then I'd come back to it. You know what I mean? Like, I'm not totally against it, but mostly, yeah. I'd say no, probably. Yeah.
All right. And out of the interest of time, Brooklyn, what would you do? Yes or no in this scenario?
I would definitely say yes. I think that she could easily be taken advantage of sexually by other people and not be making the active choice to be ready to have children. I think that it's a heavy burden to place on grandparents to expect them to put the children in foster care, because like what person with a heart could do that? You know what I mean? But it's also unfair for them to continue to need to care for more and more children, right? I don't know. I just think she is not capable of caring for them. And it's not only that, but it's also that she's mentally unable to like have the full capacity of decision making here to make a wise choice. So I don't think it's not fair to her to continue to have children. It's not fair to the grandparents to continue to care for them. I think she should be sterilized.
Well, Brooklyn comes out guns ablazing. Just to clarify, I do think you have a heart, Lexi, even if you think the grandparents should put the kids in foster care.
Oh, I would be interested to see if
Oh.
they've even asked her. Like, would you rather us just do this so you don't have to have cramps, so you don't have to have babies? You know, like she may want it. I would
Yeah.
be interested to see.
That's a good point. Yeah.
Well, and
Yeah,
in that case, if they're concerned that she's not capable of making that decision, then how is she capable of having children, right?
Well, I'm actually gonna cut us off, move us on. There's one last story I want to get over, and we have about 5 minutes left. I'm so sorry. I'm so glad that people are loving just this turmoil. I mean, because that's really kind of the point of this presentation today, is I wanted to provide our future Chileans an opportunity to see the world's not Disney. You need to focus on your own problems and your own scenario, your own life circumstances in order to measure yourself for your own progress. And that there is no right answer, right? Like, man, that's why you got to be an advocate for your opinion and views, because not everyone agrees, and that's okay. And if you want to shape the world you want, you got to get out there. So I say that I am barely in the yes camp. The reason for barely is I just am the thought of this can of worms of, yeah, at what point do you stop sterilizing unfit mothers? That's just kind of a scary thought for me, because I could see it being justified more and more. But I will say yes. The answer is actually both. This story actually has the saddest conclusion yet out of all the stories we've come across. So the procedure was approved by a medical board, but the woman never appeared for the operation. 2 years later, she gave birth to another child, so this is now 8 children that the grandparents are taking care of. Her parents applied for her to be sterilized again, but this time their application was denied. So you can see how among the medical board themselves, what a controversial and hard decision this is for them. And tragically, the woman fell pregnant again, but this time was killed by a violent partner during her pregnancy.
Oh, wow.
And yeah, and that's the end of
Oh,
that's the end of that scenario. And I think that this video is definitely for older children instead of younger children. But I love feeling engaged in real life and learning of and thinking about these real life stories that people go through, and trying to just understand myself of what would I feel and what would I do, to just try to get a pulse of what are my priorities, what is my opinions, and what kind of a person am I. So I hope that you had some of those thoughts and experiences from that last story, from all the stories, that last story wasn't just gloom for you. We got one more, and this one will have just not so much a debate, because I'm actually going to give you the answer of what happens. but I'll just let you guys give some closing thoughts on what you think of the scenario. We'll need plenty of reading, though. So if you guys wouldn't mind, Tanner, will you read this slide for us?
Yeah. On August 29th, 2005, Hurricane Katrina began to savage America's South. As a result of the storm, 215 bodies found in nursing homes and hospitals in New Orleans. The 45 bodies found at one location, Memorial Medical Center. This was far more than any other individual location in New Orleans.
Dang it. Typos, man. Sorry for the awkward reading. I was
You're
busting
good.
this out late last night and totally glazed over those. But okay, so yeah, so Hurricane Katrina came in and many people in hospitals and nursing homes died. However, a huge majority of the deaths from hospitals and nursing homes in New Orleans came from this one hospital, this one medical center. And this is the timeline of events that took place there. Let's just popcorn read, sort of. Let's do Brooklyn, will you read a bullet? And then Lexi, will you? And then I will. And then Tanner, will you read after me?
The storm knocked out the hospital's power and running water.
Soon later, the backup generators failed after.
Life care patients on the 7th floor who were dependent on machines like ventilators began to suffer.
And the Coast Guard was only able to evacuate a few critical patients.
The staff had been working at least 2 days with little sleep, food, or water.
Doctors and staff began evacuating patients for the roof.
Oh yeah, that's me, sorry. Government rescue operations shifted away from the hospital.
The heat was rising to 110 and resources were scarce and the staff was tiring.
Doctors determined they would be unable to evacuate some of the life care patients.
Led by Dr. Pau, patients were given a number 131, meaning first to evacuate and 3 being last.
After more than 72 hours, some physicians, including Dr. Pau, I'm not sure, Lexi, how to say that, sorry,
Yeah.
made the decision to sedate some of the life care and category 3 patients with injections from morphine and midazolam.
After 4 days, the hospital was empty of all surviving patients and staff. 45 decomposing corpses were found in the hospital. Wow.
Okay, so this chain of events is basically just to try to help us take on the mindset of basically this medical staff has been working for days at this hospital. The floodwaters were rising up into the hospital. That's why they were trying to get people onto the roof. Running out of food and water. The power was out. The Coast Guard stopped trying to evacuate them so much. So it's basically just trying to get the point across. It is very dire. From this story, there are these 4 conclusions that were taken that were very controversial upon discovery. I'll start us off. Toxicology tests were performed on 41 bodies, and 23 tested positive for one or both of morphine and the fast-acting sedative midazolam, although few of these patients had actually been prescribed morphine for pain. We'll just continue with the chain. So you go next, Tanner.
Wesh, a forensic expert, thought 8 of the 9 deaths on the life care floor alone could conclusively be ruled homicides. Oh, wow.
A grand jury in Orleans Parish refused to indict Dr. Powell on any of the counts. Eventually, the charges were expunged, and the state of Louisiana paid Powell's legal fees.
Emmett Everett was a I'm sorry, that's right where my screen is cracked. I'm not gonna be able to read that one.
Oh,
You're good. I can read it.
Oh,
Sorry.
just so you guys know, Lexi has a super gnarly cracked screen. So sorry about that.
Emmett Everett was a paraplegic and weighed approximately 380 pounds. For these reasons, according to staff who participated in the discussion, Powell allegedly didn't think the staff could reasonably assist him in the evacuation. Powell is alleged to have administered a lethal cocktail of drugs to Everett with the intent of ending his life. One person present during the event stated that Everett only died after having his face smothered with a towel. Whoa.
So having these read out loud, I now realized that this didn't paint necessarily a super clear picture. So to summarize, basically Hurricane Katrina came in, made this hospital an island. Like the Coast Guard really stopped coming. They were running out of food and water. Medical supplies were dwindling. The staff was overworked. It was 110 degrees. And so, led by Dr. Powell, they made the decision to start sedating some of the people who they didn't think were going to make it. And later investigations found that they were doing more than sedating people. They think that they chose to end the lives of many of the patients there. Emmett's story is kind of the most shocking example how his life ended up having to be taken by a towel. So this kind of brings this is just a last and final medical kind of just crazy medical story, and sad that I wanted to try to communicate these 3 points across. Does anyone else have the 3 points being for all of our audio listeners out there who's not watching this on YouTube, because we have so many listeners, of course, but the realization that life is not Disney. Hard things happen, you know, and I don't think anyone at the hospital that day planned on being stranded from a hurricane and thinking they weren't going to be saved, you know, thinking they were out of hope. I guess I want to emphasize that for us in our lives, it's important that we focus on trying to overcome and change our own problems, and that's how we improve. And then yeah, the last thought, that one of the things that makes life so hard is that there is no right answer. There's multiple correct ways to try to do things. So any thoughts, initial takeaways on this story with Hurricane Katrina, or just any lasting takeaways from the presentation? This is it. We made it. We got all the way through.
I don't know. For the hurricane one, I think they could have made better decisions. You know, I think that what they did was wrong, trying to kill some of the patients. But I don't know. I wasn't in their situation.
Yeah. I mean, the closest thing I thought to equate it to is, I think the impression I was getting from reading about it, again, I'm sorry you guys don't have nearly enough details. I think that the doctors saw themselves basically as doing mercy killings, essentially. But
it's so hard.
any thoughts from you, Brooklyn or Lexi?
Yeah, I mean, given the circumstances and the health of the patients, they probably would have suffered a lot more if they hadn't been killed. But like, does that make it right? You know, like, and that's an impossible question to answer. That doctor is going to live with trauma and guilt and have nightmares. Like, he will not feel okay about that. Neither will anyone who was working there in that scenario.
Yeah. You, Lexi?
I think those are all really good thoughts. I think from what you told us, I would think yeah, I think I'm with Tanner as far as it sounds like horrible and horrific. But I think it also sounds like you guys said, the mercy killings. And I think like Brooklyn said too, I just feel bad for all those doctors, especially if they had that intent of mercy killings, like what they have to live with now. Like, I honestly, yeah, I don't know. I think I would like to think that they were trying to do their best and were trying to do their best for the patients. But I think overall, with this whole experience, which I'm very grateful to have been invited to, I think what this whole thing has taught me is just how important and essential it is to have different people, different ideas, and different thoughts, and for us to feel like we can share those with each other in like such a loving and caring environment. I think that's what's most important and what's important to make sure we keep in society is that it's okay to think differently. Even if I don't, even if we don't agree with each other, it's important to still respect each other and to learn to live with each other. Yeah.
I wish I had a fourth spot up there now on this so what slide to add that, Lexi, because you're right. How many times did we say throughout this, oh, that's a good point. Oh, I didn't think about that. You are so true. I don't think I planned necessarily this out well enough in my mind because I feel like the mood feels super heavy. And I did not mean it to feel so heavy of a conclusion. I love doing this with you guys. Sorry to hit it so hard today. But I
We can
really
do
am
some
grateful
would you
because I
rather's on a
do.
different podcast.
What was that?
We can do some happier would you rather's on a different podcast.
Yeah.
Little debate between ice cream and cotton candy or something. As we all know, the two best desserts.
Which is more moral to eat.
That's right. BTS is Stray Kids, and yeah, what dessert to eat? So
They're a cat.
yeah, that's right. Yeah, I guess just because it ended heavy and it was hard stuff, I am still very grateful to have done it, and I think that it was a valuable experience, and it's just meaningful to go to the dark places in life to try to it helps you recognize and have a better understanding of the human existence of our frailty and of the importance to just be always trying our best. I, I I wish I was a better sage and had wiser words of wisdom to say. But does anyone have any final thoughts before we start signing off?
I think that was a beautiful
That was
conclusion.
great, yeah.
A great takeaway message.
All right. Well, for those of you who were just dying so much to find out more sources and more details so you can switch your opinions, these following slides that I'm showing have the sources I used for each of the stories that we came across today. And
Man, look at that format. Oh my gosh.
thank
You
you.
put them in
Thank
the right
you.
format. Look at you.
Oh, I definitely just used a Google Chrome extension. It was my favorite one. I sourced all my papers with it, and they always said like you need more information to complete the source. I never did, and I always got like extra comments saying your sources are so great. I was like, yes.
Oh,
Very nice.
But special thanks to Slido. Their polls normally work really well. I just barely learned that it needs to be on the computer, so good to know. And SlidesGo made the template for today. I love them. They got lots of great free templates. And this is our beautiful logo. How do you like it, my dearest wife? Isn't it just jaw-dropping gorgeous? It was made
it
by
is
Google Gemini, so beautiful.
looks
I think we'll
very
probably change it. I think we'll probably
1900s.
Yeah, right. I like it, but I
Like,
also don't like it.
yeah.
Philosophy typically is like more serious, oldie vibes kind of logos, but I think modern, clean logos look so good. So I don't know. I'm basically waiting for Tanner to make a nice one for us. So whenever he's done with that, I'll let you know. But
That's good. I'll put it on my list.
that's okay. Um,
Great.
as for that,
Great start
I think
somewhere.
I think we can end the call and tell you all I love you. We did it. We did it for the children, for our
Yeah.
posterity to know our heart-wrenching opinions and thoughts, and excited to see y'all later another time.
Awesome.
Love you.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.